All right, everyone, we are still celebrating India's Independence Day, and for the final video in this series, we are going to be watching a program called Tomorrow is Ours, and this was again made by the Ministry of Information Films Division back in 1955. I'll read the title again for you guys. Tomorrow is Ours. So what I think this is the Indians outlining how they think the next few years are going to go for them, which I'm very interested by. I love seeing people's ideas on what the future was going to be from the past. And this should be very interesting because it's about the entire country of India. It's not about one specific thing. It's just trying to predict how India will be in the years to follow. And I think that's so interesting. So let's dive in, right? Oh man, we have a different musical cue as our intro. That already should tell us something weird is happening. Most of these documentary films of India start with like a really happy, like sitar strum. But this one started with a little bit more of a mysterious tone to it. So I'm curious how this will differ from the rest. Yeah, there it is. Tomorrow is Ours. It seems to me like people thought this was going to be like the century of India, right? The same way how Chinese people now think like this is the century of China. It seems like right after India achieved its independence, right? It seems like they thought they were ushering in the era of like Indian supremacy in the world. And whether or not that actually ended up happening, I'm curious to see what their vision of that even is. All right, producer J.S. Bhawnagari, compilation T.A. Abraham. That's an interesting last name for somebody in India. Sound recording was by P.K. Vishwantanath. Music direction by V. Shirali. Oh, I feel like I recognize that name too. And the editing is by U.K. Wadke. I don't recognize that name. I don't recognize all these names, but I'm starting to get more comfortable with these Indian credits. But you guys can let me know if I'm actually pronouncing any of their names properly. See, already the music is pretty interesting. Usually we don't get lyrics for this sort of music. This is all just instrumental stuff, but we're actually getting to hear like somebody singing, which is just like a different musical tone than the rest of this. So that's cool. I'm glad we're getting to hear this. I'm curious what they're saying though. I bet the lyrics of this song definitely give you like some more information about this, but obviously I don't know Hindi, so I don't know what they're saying. But again, maybe my Indian viewers can leave some comments telling me what the song is all about.
The familiar song, the familiar road.
I like how the first statement they say is the familiar song, so I really do expect some of you to know this song.
For 8 years, I, a displaced person, had lived among these people.
For 8 years, this is our main character, I guess. For 8 years, this guy lived as a refugee displaced among these people. That's interesting. That's interesting how that's what we're starting on.
They had given me the chance to feel again that it was good to be alive.
They gave him the chance to feel again that it was good to be alive. That's nice. That's nice that this village just provided a good home for this man. I hope this is like a true story. Obviously, these shots are all staged and everything, but like, I hope this story is at least based in truth.
I tried to repay the debt by helping them along the paths Free India was charting for them.
Tried to help them on the paths that Free India was charting for them. I wonder what exactly that means. How was he trying to help them in the way that Free India was trying to direct them to be helped anyway? You know, like I'm curious about that statement. I just wish he would elaborate on how he actually tried to help these people.
I am a Gram Sevak, and today we are having a special meeting.
What did he just say? I am a Gan Sabak? I don't know what that means, guys. I'm sorry. My Indian viewers probably know exactly what he's talking about right now, but I have no idea what that is. So let's keep watching, I guess.
The first 5-year plan is almost over, and the village elders want to get an idea of what has been done.
That's interesting. So the first 5-year plan, we learned this in the previous video actually. The Indian government came up with a series of 5-year plans immediately following their independence from the British. So what we just learned from this is that at this time, India had just completed its first 5 years of independence. And I guess these people were kind of eager to know what the next 5-year plan had in store for them.
How it is going to benefit them, and most important, what has yet to be done.
And again, this must have been such a crazy time in India's history. Like this whole village is gathered around this one like government worker trying to figure out what the future held for them. You know, like these people had no say over what the government was going to do, but whatever the government did was going to affect them a lot. So I understand why they wanted to know what the 5-year plan was going to be.
Here is a cross-section of rural India, the 285 millions who produce the food we eat.
A cross-section of rural India. I like that we're getting that because that's always what I'm asking for. So this is a look at the 280 million people who farm to feed India. That's interesting also that they gave us a number and what their specific task in India was.
There is the village headman, Ananta, intelligent and wide awake.
The village headman. Again, I'm curious if this actually is like the village chief or if this is just like an actor. I have to imagine that this is true. Like this is actually the guy who is in charge of this village. I don't think it would make any sense for them to hire an actor for this one shot, but I never quite know how much of these stories to trust.
And Dada, he's not a believer in newfangled ways. He relies on his experience of over 50 years.
Dang, this guy's over 50 years old. He looks pretty good for 50, not gonna lie.
Sukha is a cynic. And like
what is this guy smoking? I love that he's hitting like the most complex looking smoking pipe imaginable. Like I can't even describe to you what he's hitting. This must be hookah.
And like all cynics, he has a whiplash of a tongue. Always keep an eye on him. That's my habit.
You know, I really like to think that this guy is like the origin of like the Indian bad boy. Like he's a pessimist. He doesn't agree with everyone. He's smoking hookah or whatever. Like it seems like they're positing this character as like, yeah, the bad boy.
Then there is the thoughtful Mia. He accepts nothing until he's convinced, and he takes convincing. Govind is the impatient one. He's learned to read and write and wants personally to investigate everything.
You know, it's so funny them giving these little profiles on all the individual villagers because I really do appreciate that. I like getting a glimpse into like how all these people related to one another too. It's another insight into the interrelations Indian villagers had with one another.
And I mustn't forget to tell you about Amma. She's always there at these meetings, sits apart, and of course never says a word.
I feel like this is another like character in like the Indian mythology. It's just like the old mother who sits in the corner, listens to everything and just flips her little rice pan or whatever, you know? Like I feel like that is very much like the Indian grandma who has all the family power but uses none of it. You know, I feel like that is very specific like character in the Indian mentality. I could be wrong about that, but I like to think that that is.
But she's a power in our village. She notes everything. If she says nothing when leaving, it's a bad omen.
Yeah, that's exactly the vibe I get from this woman, that like her word is actually valued above like anyone else's. I don't know if that's true, but that's just the feeling I'm getting from her.
Amma and what she thinks is very much a part of our life.
Yeah, like she seems like the secret like matriarch behind this like forwardly patriarchal society.
Said, the first 5-year plan is ending. The second is on the anvil. And these are the people...
The first 5-year plan is ending. The second is on the anvil. See, again, that's such a poetic way of saying it's coming up next. You know, like it's on the anvil. It's red hot. It's about to be made. Such poetic language. See, I just never get tired of watching this sort of stuff just because of the way they use language.
People who are going to forge it as they grow more and more convinced of its value. I began by speaking about the work our own village people had done on their own initiative.
All right, so he's warming up by telling the village what their own people have done to improve their own standings. So I'm curious if we actually get to hear that. I want to know what these village people had to do to improve their own lives. So hopefully they'll tell us.
Voluntary work that had already begun to change the face of the village.
Dang, so they are showing us what they actually did, which is just crazy. Like, look how many people are out in this field. Like, what are they even doing? Again, that's a part of the character of India, is just that, like, when something's happening, there's just like 1,000 people everywhere, like helping out too. It's not just that there are 1,000 people watching, there's like 1,000 people carrying like one stone each to like build a wall or something. Like, that is a very much an Indian thing.
Getting down to the job in their spare time, the villagers had built an all-weather...
Yeah, like, what did I say? Like 1,000 people all literally doing exactly what I just described, all just dropping their rocks in one place together. That is like the Indian construction method. That is something I've definitely picked up from watching these old programs.
The road, linking us with important areas, the railway station and the trading center.
So hang on, are they preparing this land to build a railroad on? I want to know what the function of their work actually is. Like, it's one thing to see footage of their work, but to have no explanation as to what they're actually doing, it makes it kind of meaningless. You know, like, I actually wanted to know what you had all those people in that field doing, or else, like, what was the point of seeing it, you know?
The village had also been cleaned. Proper refuse pits had been built. Wells had been dug.
Hang on, so proper refuge pits had been dug. I like how that's like the first thing in cleaning up like Indian villages. It's like not enough of them had refuge pits to put all their trash. I think that's another like really good insight into what village life was like, right? Like, you would have your rubbish building up because there really was nowhere to put it. Like, there was no trash people, there were no trash bags even. You had your surroundings to put your trash in, so that's where your trash ended up going. So that's just like another interesting detail of this society to understand as it was transitioning from the pre-modern to the modern.
And now we also have our own school. Small, but a new window to the world.
See, what's crazy is they call this school small, but I can see more children lining up to go to this school than I graduated with in my high school. You know, like, this is a very big school if you ask me, based on how many children are here. But maybe that's just, you know, the difference between an American and an Indian school. Like, I can only imagine how many kids were in one classroom. Like, it must have been like 40 or 50.
We also have our own school. Small.
Like, look how many kids there are. Like, there were not this many kids in my, like, elementary school or, like, preschool or whatever, however old these kids are. Look at them. They're all bringing, oh, that's so cute, actually. They're all bringing, like, their little, like, chalkboards with them. That's another, like, little interesting detail, is that you would go to school, but you would bring a chalkboard with you. I've never done anything like that here in America. So it's, again, just interesting to see that that's how school operated for kids in India in the 50s.
I told them about similar inspiring efforts all over the country. The story of the community projects, which were gradually extending to cover every corner of India. A genuine people's movement, dissolving the apathy of centuries, overcoming doubts, prejudice.
See, again, like, he just described exactly what I've been trying to describe, but so much more eloquently.
A genuine people's movement, dissolving the apathy of centuries.
A genuine people's movement dissolving the apathy of centuries. So pretty much that is what I described, or maybe I described it in the last video. But anyway, India had been subject to colonial rule for so long that it seems like the people really just like stopped caring about like their own advancement because they really had no purpose, right? Like, any hard work that the Indian people put in would have just been reaped by the British rather than the Indians. So there was a very long period in Indian history where the Indian people just did not really engage with their own culture or like any real culture. But then India gained independence, and that's what we're celebrating this whole week, is India achieving independence for themselves. And now through this program, we can see how energized the Indian people were after achieving independence, how ready the entire population of India seems to have been to work for the greater good, right? It seems like everyone in the village is out here building for everyone's good at this point. Like, it's hard to even understand like the scope of what was taking place in India during this time. Like, the whole country was waking up and finally ready to like take action to improve its own standing. I feel like I can't emphasize like how important and how amazing that was. So let's listen to that statement one more time, right?
A genuine people's movement, dissolving the apathy of centuries.
A genuine people's movement dissolving the apathy of centuries. That's such a good statement. Like, please, you know, like, please understand the significance of that, because I lack the ability to even explain to you guys like the true significance behind that statement. So please just like say it in your head a few times.
overcoming doubts, prejudices, and superstitions.
Overcoming doubts, prejudices, and superstitions. I feel like that's an important part too, that like before this, there wasn't really this shared, unified sense of India. I feel like before this, there was your tribe and their tribe and, them over there. But I feel like during this time, because all of the Indian people, regardless on what tribe or ethnicity they were, they all suffered at the same hands of the British, that they were all willing to work together in this moment to create a new country for all of themselves. I just feel like there's such an amazing story behind the history of India and the country of India that like I feel like we need to appreciate it more. Like there is so much happening here.
Come off it, says Sukha the cynic.
Oh, I love that. I love how the bad boy is just smoking his freaking weird bong thing just in the corner while everyone works. I think that is so hilarious still. I love the bad boy character. I think that's so funny. And another thing that I find so funny is just the way that this like bad boy is like moving his body. Like he has very, at least to an American, he has very like feminine like body language. I'll say it. He does have this feminine way about him, but it's funny because he's obviously not supposed to be perceived as feminine. He's obviously supposed to be perceived as like the macho bad boy who's, smoking a freaking whatever this thing is while everyone else is doing their work. So it's funny to see how they're trying to portray him as this like masculine, lazy sort of guy, whereas his actual body language, to me at least, reads more feminine. Which again is just another difference between our cultures, right? Something that I perceive as feminine might be perceived as masculine to Indians, or the other way around. I don't know. It's funny to see how this bad boy behaves, I guess. Just the way he's using his hands, just to me, reads as feminine, which is pretty ironic considering how much I speak with my own hands.
You go on talking about what we've done. We know all about that. Tell us what our government's doing. I thought if only I could take him for a tour and show him. But that wasn't possible.
Dang, so I like the tension that's forming between our main character, like the good boy, and the bad boy. Like you can clearly see them setting up, like this is a good Indian guy. He's talking to the village about all the good stuff they did. And this is a bad Indian guy. He's smoking in the corner, criticizing everyone. It's funny. I don't know.
So I explained how it all began. It was decided to plan our future, not just leave it to fate and good intentions. In 1950, the Planning Commission was entrusted with the task, a most complicated one.
All right, the Planning Committee, that's interesting. So in 1950, the Indian government created a committee called the Planning Committee that was tasked with figuring out the best way for India to continue forward and to advance and to catch up with the rest of the world in the post-colonial era. It's very interesting to hear about a plan from a government like this. Like in America, our politicians don't come up with 5-year plans or 10-year plans or 20-year plans. Like how ridiculous does it sound for our Congress to say, this is our plan for the next 20 years, regardless of who's president? That is just such not an American ideal. So it's interesting to see the Indians going that route. And you can understand why, right? Like they needed a plan because their country had been colonized for hundreds of years. They needed a way to catch up or they never would have. So it makes sense that they were planning. It's interesting to see that they were.
Of mobilizing the country's resources, coordinating each effort, and finding the money for it.
Finding the money for it. That was my question from the last program. How did they actually get the money to develop? That's what I want to know. Because, even though India was rich, there was just so much that needed to get done that it really must have required more money than the Indian government had. So I'm curious where they really got the money to support their 5-year plans.
In April 1951, the plan was ready.
April 1951, that's interesting. I like how they have 2 versions of the plan, too. They have an English version and they have a Hindi version, which is interesting. It's interesting how English got this, special status in India, even though it's not even from India. It just, it raises above all the other, more local languages. It's an interesting aspect of Indian history, really.
And went into operation. Money was allocated for every type of development.
Hang on, this is an interesting little graphic. So we can see a little map of India, and we can see Jammu and Kashmir included up here. But a thing a lot of people might miss is that down here, Sri Lanka, or what might have been called Ceylon back then, it was also part of India. I wonder if that was on purpose. I wonder if this island actually did belong to India, or if they just included it because it was a geographic reality. I don't really know, but I always thought Sri Lanka was always independent. So it would be interesting to learn that it was once part of India, or vice versa.
2,069 crores of rupees.
Hang on, let's look at the breakdown of this real quick, shall we? So they got the agricultural and rural development, they got the irrigation and power department, they got the transport and communication department, they got industry, education, health, housing, backward classes, that's weird, and rehabilitation. That's, hang on, backward classes. I don't know what that means, backward classes. I feel like that's a class for adults to learn things that you would usually teach kids, like how to read and write. Am I getting that right? Backward classes? It seems like you're teaching people stuff that they had to learn a long time ago, which is why you would call it backwards, but I really don't know. Maybe this is where teachers learn from students? No, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know. What was a backward class? Like, can any of my Indian audience explain that to me? I know it's written in English, but it must have a meaning somehow. I don't know. I don't really know what backward classes means. And I also don't know what rehabilitation means. Like, what, in this context, like, what were you rehabilitating? Was it people? Was it land? I don't know.
2,069 crores of rupees to be spent in 5 years.
2,069 rolls of rupees to be spent over 5 years on all these things. So I don't know if that's a lot of money or not a lot of money, but it seems like they were investing heavily.
This money was to be spent to achieve new production targets in agriculture and industry.
Wow, this is an interesting little graphic because we can see some of this money went to producing dams because we watched a program on how Indian people made dams a few weeks ago. But then we also have another little area that brings us to a factory, which is what we watched yesterday. We learned about how these funds helped build factories in India. So it's interesting that we already, based on what we've seen on this channel before, already sort of understand what's going on here.
And to advance India on the road to social progress. 82% of our population lives in villages like ours, so top priority was given to rural development schemes.
Hang on, that's an important statement. So 82% of all Indians lived in villages, so rural development was prioritized in this 5-year plan. Again, that's a very smart decision on their behalf, and it also just, again, illustrates how these plans even work.
360 crores of rupees were set apart for this purpose.
Again, you have like 1,000 people harvesting grain all at the same time. Like, again, like most farms, I feel like in America or Europe, like it's one farmer harvesting their crops. But here, there's a lot more collectivization or a lot more collectivism taking place in the farm work, which is, again, just an interesting note.
First, steps were taken to give...
I wonder if that had to do with these 5-year plans or if that was always an aspect of Indian culture. I'm curious, especially during this time, because collectivism, especially on farms, led straight to communism. So I'm curious if that was introduced to them or they always worked on farms like that.
First, steps were taken to give land to the tiller.
Oh, okay, so the first step was to give land back to the peasants, and it seems like those Hindi words were like the kings or like the landlords of certain areas, or something like that. Somebody who controlled land and prevented these villagers from using it for their own purposes. That's interesting. So they're banning... It seems like they're banning like landlords or like cruel landowners. I could be wrong. Somebody who actually understands their language, please let me know what they actually said, but I think that's what I'm picking up on.
And to the tiller by abolishing jagirs and zamidaris in many areas. Reforms included the fixing of ceilings on land holdings.
Reforms included fixing the ceilings on land holdings. That's an interesting first reform.
To bring about increased production, work began on the reclamation of waste lands.
The reclamation of waste lands. See, I'm very interested in this as well, because it's interesting to think that like all these villagers agreed on certain lands being wastelands that nobody used for anything because they had been like so thoroughly destroyed somehow. It makes me curious why exactly these lands were abandoned in India. You know, like you would imagine that in a place with so many people, all usable land would be used. So what happened to this little plot of land that made it so unusable that no one in all of India was able to use it until now? You know, like what caused it to be unusable until now? And what did they do to remediate that?
Soil deficiency was studied and fertility increased by the use of suitable organic and chemical manures.
Dang, I like how he said manure like that, but I also like how this guy is spreading the fertilizer. I think that's fertilizer. It's just, again, it's very funny that like he's spreading it by hand. I don't know why, but in America, the fertilizers are spread by machines and stuff. So it's always funny to see the job that a machine does in America being done in India just by a person. You know, it's funny because honestly, it's simpler this way too.
Greater attention was paid to seeds and their quality. Modern farming techniques were popularized. In rice cultivation...
Yeah, again, you can see them all farming the same field together, which implies that this isn't any one person's field. This is like the village's field, and everyone works on it, so everyone reaps the rewards of that work. And that seems, you know, very collectivist or communist by today's standards, but sometimes that's literally just what you need to do in order to ensure that your village has food. I feel like the arguments for communism make a lot more sense when you're faced with poverty, you know, or at least, you know, the theoretical arguments for communism. So I'm interested to know the justifications behind the system in India. Was it because they were trying to be communist, or was this simple survival method right here? I have a feeling this was more of just like a subsistence survival farming method than it was like, oh, let's be communist now.
Startling results were achieved by the Japanese method. And agriculture...
By the Japanese method. That's interesting how like the one farming thing they learned was the Japanese method. I guess they're growing rice, so it makes sense that like Americans weren't teaching them. Well, I guess they were growing rice, so that checks out. It's funny.
Research stations were established to help the farmer improve and protect his crops.
Dang, that's so crazy. They had crop dusting all the way back in the 50s too. Like, again, that's just something that I really did not think the Indians were engaging in during this time. Like, they were crop dusting their crops with pesticides and fertilizers and whatnot. Like, that's crazy.
Aircraft were mobilized to halt the invasion of the locusts.
Oh, to halt the invasion of the locusts. That was completely unexpected from me, but that's crazy too. I guess they did have like swarms of locusts back then. Does India still have swarms of locusts like this? I wonder. I know here in America we destroyed the breeding grounds of these locusts, so they no longer swarm like this. So I wonder if it's the same in India, or if they still get like these massive swarms.
And the march of the desert. Over large areas, seed was sown from the air to grow protective green belts.
Damn, that's so interesting too. Like, I feel like so many people, especially on YouTube nowadays, are just starting to learn about like the Great Green Belt of the Sahara or whatever. But it's so interesting to see the Indians engaging in this type of afforestation all the way back in the 50s. Like, they're actually trying to create natural barriers to desertification all the way back then. That's so incredible. I love learning stuff like that, you know? Like, it's so smart, it's so intelligent, and it really reveals like we've known the solution to the problems that are plaguing us now, like, you know, decades ago.
The drive is on to grow more trees, to preserve and extend our forests, which save our soil from erosion and conserve its fertility.
See, like, even that statement reveals how much understanding they had on, like, the environment and, like, their place in it. You know, like, you don't hear stuff like that coming from American programs like this, like how we need to protect our forests for our own fertility and productivity, you know, like, that's never really posited like that to Americans. So, again, it's just very interesting to hear the Indian form of environmentalism.
And all over the country, the farmers' earnings are being increased by scientific animal husbandry.
The farmer's income is being increased by advances in animal husbandry practices. I wonder what the advances in animal husbandry are. Is it just like factory farms? Are we going to see like 1,000 cows in like 1 square meter or something? Or are there some actual techniques in animal husbandry that we're about to see that like they learned for the first time here?
I could see that Ananta, the village headman, was impressed by the picture I had given him of the prize-winning bull.
That's so funny that he just like handed him a picture of a cow and was like, trust me, like your cows one day are gonna look like this, you know? Also, what a weird looking cow. Like, I know this is like the special cow of India, but like these look so weird compared to like what I think of as regular cows. I mean, I guess to me, regular cows are just the ones that Europeans grew, and these are just the ones that Indians grew. Like, these are regular cows too. They look so different than the cows I'm used to seeing.
Poultry is also getting its due share of attention. incubator chicks.
Okay, so we are getting a little bit into factory farming, like seeing all these little baby chicks in one incubator. Like this is like the beginning of factory farming for sure.
Planning is for everyone. Yes, sir. And cooperative marketing is being encouraged.
Cooperative marketing. Can anyone please in the comments tell me what that sign said? I can't read Hindi or whatever, so I don't know what that sign says. So can somebody, I just need one comment letting me know what that sign actually said.
It ensures a fair return to the farmer for his produce. Govind, impatient as ever, interrupts. What is the use of all this planning? In our village, if the rains don't come, that's the end of all our plans.
You know, that is a very fair point. Not only in like the logic of it, but like in how to convince villagers to do this, right? Like a villager knows that if they put all this work in and it doesn't rain, they're probably dead. So you have to communicate to them that like these are systems that will outlast like good rains, bad rains, or whatever. Like more than anything, that illustrates the problems that villagers had with these plans and like the worries that they had more than anything of why do we have to plan? Like our planning always goes out the window the second the weather changes. You know, it's interesting to actually be learning the issues that the Indian government had to convince the people weren't actually going to be that big of an issue. It's just like that's another valuable insight into this whole process.
Govind was talking as if nothing had been done in our village. He had forgotten the canal near his field, tube wells were being bored, and tanks, lakes and pools were being better utilized. We had done a lot in minor irrigation work. And then I gave them a picture of our gigantic multi-purpose projects. Tungabhadra, the Damodar Valley.
Dang, I want a copy of this map so bad. I bet there's so much interesting information. Like you can see all these, oh no, wait, hang on a second. You can see like energy towers and you can see dams. And I wonder, I wonder if we can see the Mayurashi Dam or whatever that dam was that we watched them build in India. It doesn't even look like we can see that area of India on this map. But please, can somebody go back and frame by frame see if we can actually see the dam that we watched being built in a previous video? I'm super curious about that.
Bhakra Nangal, Hirakud, names famous all over the world.
Names famous all over the world? Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. Maybe back in the 60s, but I'm not so sure anyone's recognizing those names outside of India nowadays.
And then I gave them a picture of our gigantic multi-purpose projects. Tungabhadra, the Damodar Valley, Bhakra Nangal, Hirakud, names famous all over the world.
Yeah, those are definitely names that are not famous anywhere but India.
Government is spending 561 crores of rupees on these projects. They will help bring under cultivation the fields of thousands of villages like ours and would generate electric power for our homes and factories.
Oh, are they constructing a dam here? This might be the same footage from that old program we watched a few weeks ago, too. Maybe not. This doesn't actually look that familiar, but it could be. This actually looks like a different dam. Like, I feel like I remember what the other dam looked like, but maybe still, I don't know. Again, we just need to appreciate what building a dam even represented to people during this time. Not even Indian people, but any people during this time. Building a dam meant you finally gained access to electricity. Like the first time you would actually have electricity in your home was after the dams were built, or at least a lot of the time that was the case. So what we have to understand about the building of this dam is not just that they have a bunch of water or anything, but they actually have electricity now, which I guess, you know, water might be as important as electricity, but electricity definitely paved the way for more modernization to take place within India. So it's important to appreciate how these dams were the things that were providing electricity that allowed the Indians to continue to develop, which again should just allow us to appreciate these dams all the more. Like these dams were literally breathing new life into the country of India. You know, like they were actually allowing India to partake in the industrialization that it desired to partake in. Which again, appreciate the dams is all I'm trying to say.
I explained to Govind that these multi-purpose projects
This looks like the Mayurashi Dam, though. This might actually be from that program.
cannot be established anywhere. Locations have to be carefully chosen, and many years elapse before the blueprint becomes reality. A long and arduous process, but vital to the future economic progress of our country. In any case,
Yeah, that seems to be like the main takeaway from all of this, is like all the actions they were taking were very costly and required so many people to collaborate. But the benefits of all this labor were also so great that it was all worth it in the end. That's pretty incredible.
in any case, the electric power that they will generate will profoundly influence life throughout the vast spaces of India.
That's exactly what I just said, isn't it? The electricity produced in this dam is going to transform the lives of so many Indian people. Like it's hard to even fathom how many lives are going to be changed just by the transformer that we're looking at right here.
Including our village. The mere mention of this newfangled thing called electricity was too much for Dada. What? You want us to hang these dangerous torches in our huts? Better government had spent the money on more useful things.
I actually like that comment so much because again, that gives us so much insight into like the mentality of the Indian people during this time, how they were reluctant to adopt electricity in their homes because they thought they were dangerous, which I guess, I don't know, maybe they were dangerous, but are they any more dangerous than like an open flame? Probably not, you know? So it's interesting to see that there was a resistance to the modernization that was taking place. So far in these programs, I've seen little to no resistance to modernization. So it is very interesting to actually get to see not only that there was resistance, but to hear the reasons for the resistance, to hear the worries and the complaints of the villagers themselves. Like that is such interesting and important information. I feel like, again, so lucky that we're getting to hear these words from the lips of the villagers who said them, you know?
No, Dada, you don't understand. Electric power will give birth to factories that will make machines.
And this is so funny too, like the way the guy has to explain to Dada like that electricity is good. He's like, no, electricity is great. Like we can build all these factories. Like, but what does the peasant care about the factories? You know, like he doesn't care. It's funny to think that like to this guy, electricity just doesn't matter at all to him. Like that's not a card that he wants to play. And it definitely gives you a sense of the mentality of at least some Indian villagers back during this time.
Machines that will reduce manual labor, speed up the economic progress of our country.
And I can also imagine how frustrating it must have been trying to explain like electricity to like Indian villagers. Like, no, like it's going to help us so much. Like you can't even describe how helpful electricity would be to have. You know, like you don't even know the applications that electricity is going to have very shortly after this. It must have been infuriating trying to convince these villagers to value something that you clearly understood the value of, like electricity. And even more than electricity, to these people, electricity must have represented like the future, you know, like the ability to do things that we've never been able to do before. And it must have just been so frustrating to tell that to another person and for them to just be like, what? I don't care. Like these lights are weird, you know, like it must have been such a weird time to be communicating this sort of stuff to people.
Even now, factories are rising in areas which were once only agricultural, thanks to electric power. These factories increase our wealth, give employment to our children.
That is interesting how they said the factories not only bring them wealth, but also gives employment to their children. It's just funny that like, I don't know, factory work for your children was like a good thing back then. You know, nowadays, if you were lining your kids up to work in a factory, that would like just not be the best thing. But back then, like having your kids lined up for a factory job was like having a one-way ticket to actual prosperity during this time. So it's funny to hear the parents wanting their children to work in factories because let me tell you, that won't last for long.
Thoughtful Mia spoke quietly. The point he made was valid. We must have roads and railways all over, even to connect the remotest villages, he said. Yes, Mia, that is also being planned. The ultimate target is that no village should be more than 5 miles from a main highway.
No village should be more than 5 miles from a main highway. Again, that's so funny to hear in America because every village, every town is on the highway. Like there is no town that's not by the highway.
The present plan cannot achieve this completely, but aims at improving existing roads and providing an additional 23,000 miles of highway.
This is cool that we're getting to see paved roads in India from like the 1950s though. Like that is, we can't forget like how long ago this really was.
Our railway services are expanding too. Today we have 34,000...
Like 1950s, like America was just starting to build their own highways, you know? So the fact that India had some roads of their own as well just like shows you that they weren't that far behind, really.
miles of railway track, but this is not enough. Now we are opening new lines, assembling locomotives faster than we originally planned. And building all types of coaches. In addition, the railways are providing more amenities for third-class passengers. Then, sea transport is also important, for we have a large coastline. Our ports are being expanded and modernized. Cochin, Madras, and a new port, Kandla, on the west coast, will handle increasing traffic, relieving the strain on Bombay.
What I find interesting is that everything they just talked about right now is pretty much exactly what we just learned about in the program we watched yesterday. Just seeing these ships being built, like, it doesn't even need to be in India to be impressive. It's so wild to see this big of a machine, like, in this stage of its construction, you know? Like, I'm so glad we're getting to see this. This is just like, it's a peek into something I didn't even know I wanted to see, especially in this sort of program.
89 lighthouses are being constructed and modernized along the coast.
89 lighthouses. That's another like antiquated thing that we just don't even build anymore, right? Like nowadays boats have like radar or sonar or whatever they have, GPS pretty much, but back then they still needed lighthouses. It's so funny seeing like outdated technology like this being built as if it were new, you know? Like this is when lighthouses were still like not new, but like they were still useful, you know? It's funny seeing them build something that now is no longer useful at all.
All this increased activity means increasing work for our Posts and Telegraph organization. We can't become a modern nation if we continue to accept the old delays. It is planned that...
That's interesting too, how part of being a modern nation is being able to communicate not instantly, but quickly with one another. That is true. It's just, again, it's interesting how they knew that and they were pursuing that.
Every village with a population of 2,000 will have a post office.
Every village with a population of 2,000 will have a post office. That's interesting. I wonder how many post offices that means.
And every village with a population of 5,000 will have a telegraph office.
That's interesting. So every village with 5,000 people will have a telegraph office. So does that mean there were still like a whole bunch of smaller villages in India that didn't have telephones or a post office? Probably, right?
All India Radio is a part of our lives now, helping us...
See, that's so funny that radio had already become like widely accepted and adopted in India. It's just, that's so fascinating for some reason to me.
...know our country better. Many more of us can tune into India and the world. The village...
But I do like that Indian people like really wanted to listen to their own music. Like there's something funny about that.
Programs, as you know, are given great importance.
Dang, look, they're recording one of these songs. I love this little insight into them actually recording one of the songs that we listen to for these programs. Like, these are the women that actually have been singing to us this whole time. Like, I love that. That's so cool. I don't know what these guys are doing here, but these women have been singing this whole time.
Yes, we are also conquering space. Civil aviation is developing rapidly.
Conquering space. I like how the airplane is what they use to say they're conquering space. Like, obviously space and the air are kind of two different things, but I guess at this time it might have all been the same, especially to a whole bunch of Indian villagers.
The air services have been nationalized. They are reducing distances, giving a new meaning to time. Sukha never misses an opening. We are beginning to fly before we've learned to walk, he mocks. No, Sukha.
Sarkar, man, the bad boy, gotta be criticizing even airplanes. Like, what does this guy have against airplanes? And can he not walk? I'm pretty sure people in India could walk before then, too.
No, Sukha. You're wrong, absolutely wrong. Don't just judge...
I like how what he's saying is like, no, you're absolutely wrong. But like, if you look at his actual motions in this shot, like, it doesn't seem like he's telling him, like, you're just wrong, Cigar. Like, stop being so negative on everything, man. It looks like he's saying something different than what the narrator is implying he's saying.
Things from where you stay. Think of India as a whole. moving with determination to catch up with the rest of the world in the shortest possible time.
See, that statement right there is like, that is the thesis of like this episode and like this week. Is just India is trying to catch up to everyone else because they were colonized. And more than that, what did he say at the very beginning? Let's listen to it again.
You're wrong, absolutely wrong. Don't just judge things from where you stay. Think of India as a whole, moving with...
Think of India as a whole. I can't emphasize enough like how important that one thought was towards the formation of this country. Like before this, India had never been just one unified place. It had always been like thousands of different sorts of people who just had to get along together. But during this time, they're making a purposeful effort to make India one place. And all that work still exists today, right? There is still this sense of Indian unity within India, or at least I imagine there is. I can't say for sure, but I have to imagine that there is a sense still to this day of India being united, regardless of what ethnic group you are. So this is just like the very beginning of this sentiment. And this sentiment is like the key to Indian statehood, pretty much.
Determination to catch up with the rest of the world in the shortest possible time. We have all along been an agricultural country. Today we have taken the first steps towards industrialization. The responsibility...
Dude, I'm pretty sure I've seen this shot before. I think this shot was in the Mayurashi Dam video or whatever. Maybe not, maybe I'm still just getting tripped up, but I feel like I've seen these shots before.
For this development rests on private enterprise and on the expanding public sector, which is handled by the state. 300 crores of...
Hang on though, that just made me think. So like, was the government controlling pretty much like all economic development during this period? It seems like they were. Like obviously there were still like individual farmers who would sell things at markets, but it feels like at this point India had like a planned economy. Tell me if I'm wrong about that, but it seems like this was kind of a very sort of communist time in India's history. I won't call India communist because I feel like India has its own culture to explain how they were behaving during this time. Like communism, again, is a Western ideal, so it's hard to apply that to India. But I am curious about how the economy of India worked during this time. Was it free or was it a command economy? Who knows?
Rupees have been made available to private enterprise over the last 5 years.
Because it seems like they did have private enterprise, but it also seems like the government had every say in the economy for everything. So I can't actually tell who was in control of what here.
Part of it by government and part of it by the capital market. The first 5-year plan laid emphasis on the fuller utilization of the existing capacity in industries like plywood.
Okay, so that's an interesting statement as well. The first 5-year plan was about using the resources that India already had available to just improve them, to improve their textile output, to improve their salt output, stuff like that. Like that's very interesting. I'm so glad that they specified that because that makes their plans make a lot more sense too. Like their first 5-year plan was just, all right, like let's use whatever we have and improve on that. And then their second 5-year plan was saying, all right, we made some money, let's invest our money smartly and hopefully benefit our whole country, or at least that's what the last program made it seem like. So that's interesting. I'm glad that we got that little insight into how the 5-year plans were decided on and what they were focusing on.
Cotton textiles.
Dude, that one textile shot, we saw that yesterday for sure.
Sugar, soap, and a host of others. Cables, paper, quinine, penicillin, DDT.
Well, hang on, that's interesting for a few reasons. The last thing they mentioned was DDT. So they're making like an industrial agricultural chemical. That's pretty interesting. But what's more interesting is everything else they focused on. So it seems like at this time, their economy was focused on taking raw materials and producing a simple product out of it, like string using wool or, textiles using wool, I guess, also, which is interesting because in the program we watched yesterday, actually, we can see that then they started focusing on more complex products, like making machines that make machines or making refrigerators or radios and that sort of stuff. So I'm actually really glad they told us what the first 5-year plan was focusing on.
Other vital industries essential to the economic growth of the nation have been expanded. They will see even greater expansion, for only when we are self-sufficient in iron and steel, in cement, aluminium, oil products, and other basic materials can we advance with rapid strides.
So yeah, that seemed to be another goal of this first 5-year plan, was just to make them self-sufficient in the resources that they would need in order to continue building their industry. That's interesting. Again, it seems like whoever was in charge of planning really did their homework and actually understood how to build a nation, because everything I've heard them say is just like exactly what they should have done.
The throb of the machines captures the new spirit of India.
The throb of the machines captures the new spirit of India. That's an interesting statement as well. Yeah, I feel like I talked enough about Indian factories in the previous program that I'm kind of just going to skip over this stuff, all right? But this is really cool, just getting to see footage of Indian factories creating all these different sorts of products. It really is impressive, I will say that. Like, look at all these. I don't even know what these are. Are these engines or something? Motors? But look how many they made, you know? Like this, it's impressive. Oh, and look, all the women are making telephones. Again, there's an interesting division of labor here, because it seems like men and women work in factories, but it seemed like men only were working with like molten metals and only women are working with like assembling telephones. So it seems like there was still gendered labor, but both still got to partake in labor.
Where private enterprise cannot cope with the task, government steps in. For research,
where private enterprise cannot cope with the task. That's interesting because it implies that the government is allowing private companies and enterprise to try things, and whatever they fail at, the government steps in, which again just helps you understand how much control over the economy the government of India was exerting during this time.
too must set the pace for industry, providing the knowledge that is so essential for national advance.
Hang on, that was cool. So this guy's carrying like this light and it just lit up even though he didn't plug it in or anything. So he must have put it like near something radioactive or something. I don't even know. But like that light lit up without him doing anything. That was a cool little one shot.
Modern laboratories among the finest in the world have been set up. These laboratories are the brains trust of the country. Work is well underway to estimate the hidden resources of our land. We are rich in minerals.
Dang, that's so funny how like some Indian guys were just working in like a super advanced like science laboratory and this other guy's just mining. Even though India was advancing, only some people got to take advantage of those advancements. And some people still just had to mine with a pickaxe in the dark all their lives, you know? And ironically, that mining fueled the industrialization of India just as much as all of those scientists did.
But they are largely untapped. Our experts are finding out where these riches are and in what quantities. They are also devising methods of ensuring that mining is scientific and nothing is wasted. Mineral prospecting and mining are some of the most important tasks facing our planners.
This is crazy. What rocks are they collecting right here? These are like really thin, like shale rocks almost. I'm very curious about these rocks all of a sudden. Like, I feel like I've seen those sorts of rocks before. Like they're reflective and like metallic in a certain way. That's cool. That's cool how they're like extracting those. Did those gold bars say MGM? That's a weird crossover company to be featured in this program.
But Ananta, the village headman, is worried. Tell us, he says, what will happen to our cottage crafts when the products of these colossal factories flood the market?
Dang, that's actually like a real worry too. Like that's actually impressive that these villagers are worried about stuff happening that far in advance. Because that worry that these villagers just brought up is like what destroyed the American economy. They're worried about automation, they're worried about having their jobs stolen, and they're worried about their crafts being devalued by the automation of factories. They're worried that if they give all this up to machines, they won't be able to create anything of value themselves, and then they won't have a way of earning money. It's just like, wow, they were able to recognize the risks of industrialization all the way back then before it was even happening. That's so wild and so impressive. And it's also crazy that like that problem has existed for so many people over all the world pretty much. Like every nation that ever industrialized probably fought with this same worry that like they were just going to create a world where their people didn't actually have a job to work. So that's really cool to see the villagers having those worries as well.
Our planners, Ananta, have made provision for that too. Expansion and encouragement is being given to small-scale and cottage industries.
I wonder if this is actually true. Like this seems like the part of the video that is actually like government propaganda, you know? Like that seems like an actually valid criticism that those villagers had. And it seems like they don't actually have like a proper answer to that question. So they're kind of just giving like a BS answer. Like this is totally the propaganda that's trying to make you believe the government of India. You know, like the purpose of making this program was to be shown to Indian people for them to believe in the country of India and all the actions that the government was taking. Like this is literal propaganda trying to get us to agree with the guy who's talking to these villagers, which again just informs our understanding of this media. Whether or not India actually engaged in supporting, you know, local crafts or whatever, I have no idea.
Expansion and encouragement is being given to small-scale and cottage industries. The All India Khadi and Village Industries Board is carrying out the program. Village workmen are now handling better and improved tools. They are also encouraged to form cooperative societies for the manufacture and sale of their goods.
The Indian workers are also encouraged to form cooperative societies for the manufacture and sale of their goods. So what they're pretty much saying is that the workers should control the means of production in a cooperative fashion. You know, like they really did just outline communism for us. I don't know how extreme of communism they were actually going for, but they definitely described communism there.
That is for the manufacture and sale of their goods. And government is doing everything to patronize these goods and to popularize them among the people.
That's funny how they used the word patronize because, I don't know, to modern American English, patronize feels like a negative thing to do to people, but I guess during then, they were actually being patrons to these people. So it makes sense. It's funny how the language has kind of changed since this has been made.
Everyone is aware that cottage industries have a vital role to play, that they help our villages to live, give employment to over 37 million people. Large-scale and small-scale industries will work side by side for the good of all of us.
I gotta get a carpet when I go to India, but I want to look at this store real quick because hang on, this is such a good sports store. So what we have here, we have some rackets. These look like badminton rackets. Maybe they're tennis rackets, but they look like badminton rackets. Then we have these little clubs. To me, these look like field hockey clubs. I've never played field hockey, but they look like field hockey clubs. But then all the way over here in this corner, you can see all these cricket bats, and I think that's hilarious, is they had all these cricket bats in this like sports department store of India all the way back then. I just think that's a really funny detail.
They will help to reduce our dependence on articles of
Oh, look at that. Those are helmets. I thought those were turtle shells, but no, I think those are helmets. That's funny.
foreign manufacture, make us self-sufficient.
Dang, I like that sign that just says surgical instruments.
Dada wants to know what is being done to beat back disease. A healthy people are...
See, I'm not going to criticize these people, but they definitely have a lot of questions. Maybe this is like the staged aspect. Like these villagers didn't ask all these questions. They just need people to ask these questions so that they can address it on the actual program. But it's funny. It's just funny hearing all these questions come from these same, you know, collection of villagers. Like, does this guy really look like the sort of guy to be worried about like diseases and stuff? And also, how would industrialization bring new diseases? I feel like if anything, it would help cure diseases, but whatever.
More important than these machines you speak of, he says. True. In fact, the problem is immense, but a good start has been made. A program to control malaria is being extensively carried out.
Oh, see, this is cool. We're getting to see the actual hand decorations that Indian villagers have put on the outsides of their homes. This is just like, again, this is such a great glimpse into like local culture from this period of time. I don't know if people still do this to their houses. It's such a cool thing that we get to see these works of art preserved in time, in place like this.
Tuberculosis, the most dreaded disease, is being...
Did you guys hear that? Tuberculosis. Tuberculosis. Not tuberculosis. Tuberculosis. I just think that's funny too. I don't even think he said it wrong. I think that's actually how they used to say it back then too.
The most dreaded disease is being conquered. Mobile health vans are touring the villages. Our own village knows how valuable their help has been. Special care is being given to the health of mothers and children. But while the battle against disease is on...
Yeah, you know, you're right. I didn't think about that either. While India was industrializing, they also had to be brought up to speed on like the latest medical practices. And it's so interesting to see like this wave of medicine just entering India. You know, like at this point in time, there was a new army of Indian doctors going around the entire country helping people. It's hard to even fathom something like that happening. But it must have been amazing for these people to finally, for the first times in their lives, receive like medical help for an illness that they had.
The training of doctors and nurses is being speeded up, and these young trainees get practical experience under...
See, look at the sign, free rural medical aid. Like that's, I don't know, that's something else that's worth mentioning. That's definitely something else that is not provided here in America either.
Expert supervision. New hospitals and dispensaries are rising all...
New dispensaries, you say? Interesting. What was a dispensary before this modern age? Like, what were they dispensing? Like, drugs, I guess? Maybe. I guess that would make sense. Dang, look at this, like, contraption of a hospital bed. This is, like, the most terrifying piece of metal and sheets I've ever seen. Like, yeah, I do not like all the clamps on this medical bed.
And remember, health and housing go hand in hand.
Health and housing go hand in hand. You know, like the wisdom they're dropping on us is just freaking real right now.
One of the truest lessons we have learned from the community development projects is that we must live in healthy surroundings and better designed homes.
You know, I feel like there's a little bit of like judgment in that statement. Like, yeah, I guess we learned that we need to live in clean houses, guys. Like, I feel like Indian people were capable of maintaining clean houses long before the British came or left, you know? Like, I just feel that feels like you're telling some people you think their houses are dirty.
In the towns, industrial housing has been undertaken on a large scale by the government.
Yo, it's the same housing complex. I feel like I've seen this housing complex like 2 or 3 times by now.
We are planning an end to slums, the festering sores on our landscape.
Wow, that's an interesting statement too. Slums, the festering sore on our landscape, which they're not wrong. Slums do usually look not that great, but it's just funny because I feel like these buildings are the slums now. You know, like there are so many people that live in these sorts of buildings, and there are so many more buildings that have since been built that like all these old buildings probably are the slums now. I could be wrong about that, but that's kind of how things went in America, so that's all I'm saying.
Govind was not sure whether all this was possible. Without education...
I like this character, this like smart but cautious character. I'm a fan of him for sure.
What can they do, he asked. Quite right. But we can't wait till everyone is fully educated. However, the process is being speeded up, parallel to our other activities. During the first 5-year plan, a large number of primary schools have been opened throughout the country.
Again, a large number of primary schools had just opened as a result of this 5-year plan. Isn't that like, that's just so crazy to me. Again, like, how did they just do so many things at once? They started new schools, they started new factories, they started like new processes of extracting minerals, you know, like so much was taking place all over India during this period. I feel like that's the most important thing to understand about this. It's just like how monumental of a task it was to steer India in the right direction after colonialism, you know, like it's so impressive to really learn about this.
In many states, primary schooling has become compulsory. Education is being made broad-based and practical. The young are learning to work with their hands and to respect manual labor.
That is definitely something you cannot say about American schools nowadays. You know, we are definitely not being taught how to work with our hands and definitely not respecting manual labor. And in fact, I feel like in America, there's such a disrespect for anyone who does manual labor. Like, I feel like that is very much looked down upon for no reason, obviously. But I just feel like what they're teaching these kids in school in India in the 60s is like exactly what we got to be teaching our kids now, you know? I feel like that's a very interesting parallel right there.
Special stress is laid on technical education. And with great enthusiasm, adults are receiving education at thousands of centers.
See, is this like a backwards school, or is this backwards training where adults are being taught like basic children's skills, like how to read? Like, that's what I imagine a backward class is. I still don't know about that though.
Also, for the first time, arrangements are being made to educate the handicapped. You can get an idea of the rate of...
Wow, you know, that's crazy that they included like the handicapped in this too. It's very clear that they are making like as big of an effort as they can to include like everyone and just to be like totally positive. Like that's all I'm getting from all of these programs. It's just like positive vibes from India. Like India, especially during this time, nothing but positive vibes. I think that's why I like India like in general, is no matter what, India is just always giving out good vibes. Like I just can't explain it any other way. I hope that's not insulting to Indian people. Like, good vibes are good. Like, let me tell you, like, there's always this sense of positivity in every Indian program I've watched so far.
Expansion of these health and educational services when you realize that government is spending 254 crores of rupees in this field. By now, it was late, and I felt that we were all beginning to understand that the plan was a remarkable achievement, that we must see it in its entirety.
Dude, I love that little shot of like all the villagers being directed to act in a certain way. You know, like the director had to say, all right, guys, like nod your head and act like you're agreeing with what we're saying. You know, like I love those little like mini shots where they expect village people who have never even seen a camera before to be able to act for the camera. You know, I think those are so interesting, and you rarely get scenes like that anymore. Like nowadays, we're all so familiar with cameras. We sort of know how to act, but these days people really just had no conception of like what a camera was or like what the purpose of it was. So they had no familiarity on like how they should be acting in front of the camera either. It's a little piece of like human behavior that only existed during this period of history where people were still unfamiliar with cameras but in front of cameras at the same time.
A stepping stone to greater efforts that would double the per capita income in 25 years. And now, as India prepares to enter the second five-year plan, her people are inspired by its courageous targets for all-round industrial and agricultural expansion.
See, this is what I'm saying though. Like, look how many people are working in all of these shots. Like, it is the entire village out here doing whatever they're trying to do. You know, like it's not just like a company with a bunch of workers. No, this is everyone we have access to right here. And part of me thinks that's actually an aspect of the Indian communal or collective labor culture, right? Like if everyone farms together, then when the government wants to build a road, everyone also builds the road together. You know, I'm starting to understand how like communal living is a part of Indian culture. Or maybe that's just me, maybe I'm picking up on things that aren't there, but I think I'm learning something here.
More jobs will mean more purchasing power. More purchasing power will mean a growing demand. A growing demand means prosperity and happiness. That has been...
Dang, that's a cool light fixture for these street lights. Like, that's actually like a piece of art right there. I wonder, are there still street lights that ornate in India today? I have to imagine no, but maybe there are. I don't know.
The dream of centuries. The dream of the Anantas, Dadas, Sukhas, Miyas and Govinds. The Indian people on the threshold of a new dawn.
The Indian people on the threshold of a new dawn. Again, it's so interesting that they were able to recognize that they were at the end of one chapter and the beginning of another chapter. Like it shows how prescient they really were to understand that. Oh, and now we're just getting shots of every different sort of Indian person. This is fun. This is like a really who's who of like Indian cultures.
I watched Amma. She followed the talk, and this time didn't walk away silently. Get up, she said. You must eat. We can't wait the whole night. There's work to be done tomorrow.
I like that. I like how she listened to the whole story and at the end she accepts like what he's doing. Again, that's part of the propaganda of this program, is to make you think that like every village elder woman agrees with what the government is doing. But like, I don't know, I do think that's a nice little end to the story.
Yes, Amma approved.
Is that her name? Is her name Amma, or is that like a position within a village? You know, is Amma like the village elder woman who says everything, or is that just her name, Amma?
Cycling home that night, I did not think of the sunset. I thought of tomorrow, the tomorrow that is ours.
The tomorrow that is ours. Whoa, there you go. That's the title. The final words of this program was the title. That's good writing for you. The end, or whatever the end is in Hindi. Okay, so that was a lot of fun too. That was honestly pretty similar to what we just watched yesterday, but there were some key differences. This definitely went into more depth on how the Indian government and the Indian people participated in this industrial revolution. Whereas the last video was more focused on the machines and the products of industrialization, this was more focused on the human side of industrialization, which is honestly, in my head, the difference between blue videos and red videos. We got to hear some of the concerns the actual Indian villagers had with this sort of stuff. We got to see how the Indian villagers partook in these programs by providing their labor to these people. Yeah, this was a good watch. We definitely got more of the human side of India, which is exactly what I wanted. So I'm happy. At the end of this, now I feel like I do have like some sort of understanding of how India transitioned from a colonial period to a post-colonial period. I feel like that has kind of been the focus of my education surrounding India. Maybe that's just because it's the time period that all these programs were filmed in, but I really do feel like I understand the country of India as it was becoming a country for the first time. You know, like I feel like these programs have helped me understand what this country was like. And I really hope that these have helped you guys, my Indian viewers, understand your own country better. Like, I feel like there is enough information in these that even if you are from India, you will still learn some new stuff from this. So I really do think this was a good watch. And it's also very interesting, again, to see how Indian people perceived their future of their country, right? They really did think that they were going to become like an economic industrial powerhouse. And they did eventually, I guess. It's funny to see a time when that wasn't a certainty. It's interesting to see them hoping that India will turn out this way, hoping that India will industrialize. And it's also nice to get to watch these knowing that India eventually would succeed in what they were trying to accomplish. It's a very interesting watch, and I hope it's even more interesting if you're actually Indian. And you know what? I'm going to address my Indian audience specifically right now when I say Happy Independence Day, you guys. If you enjoyed watching and would like to help support my channel and what I do here, you can follow the link in the description that'll take you over to the Internet Archive. The Internet Archive is where I get all these old programs from, even the Indian ones. So if you want to support me, donate